Good morning, students. Welcome to the e-class. I am your Ekeda sir. Today we will discuss about the non-cooperation movement in India, which was started by the great Indian freedom fighters and the father of nations, Mahatma Gandhi. Dear friend, you know the Raj, British rule in India, particularly the European, they came to India as a businessman and later on they became the de facto masters of India. Among all Europeans, the British, they got succeeds and rule India for a period of 200 years. The dear students, after the Battle of Plassey, from 1757 to 1857, these 100 years, that was the company administration, East India Company ruled. But after 1857, the Great Revolt of 1857, the Indian administrations that was carried by the British cabinets, the viceroys. The British, they exploited India in different way. Finally, the Indians, they fed up, and under the leadership of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, they started the great agitations movement in India. That's why we can't deny the role of INC, Indian National Congress, and the role of Gandhiji and others leaders also. Particularly here, the non-cooperation movement, we will discuss how this movement started, in which way Gandhiji, made this movement as a mass movement, and finally that movement paved the way for the Indian nationalist, a great, we can say, a way to get independence from this British yokes. Dear friends, the non-cooperation movement that was launched on 1st August 1920 by the Indian National Congress under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. It signifies a new chapter in the history of Indian freedom struggle. Mahatma Gandhi was the main force behind the non-cooperation movement. In March 1920, he issued a manifesto declaring a doctrine of non-violent non-cooperation movement. You might have an idea about that, how Gandhiji came from South Africa and involved in the Satyagraha movements in 1915. At that time, Lal Lajpat Rai and Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, they took the leadership of Indian movements. But after the death of Bal Gangadhar Tilak, particularly the third phase of INC, we can say that is Gandhian era, under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, the Indian nationalists, they started these great movements, the non-cooperation movements. So I have told you already, Gandhi, made a manifesto and wanted, through this manifesto, he wanted people to adopt Swadeshi, Swaraj, Satyagraha, Swadharma, and Sarbodha. These 5 principles. First one is Swadeshi, second one Swaraj, third one is Satyagraha, Swadharma, and Sarbodha. The adopt Swadeshi habits, including hand spinning and weaving, work for the eradication of untouchability from the society. Gandhiji traveled across the nation in 1921 explaining the tenets of the movement, particularly this non-cooperation movement. Asahayok Andolan. So, what are the features of this movement, non-cooperation movement? Dear friend, the movement was essentially a peaceful and non-violent protest against the British government in India. Indians were asked to relinquish their titles, resign from nominated seats in the local bodies as a mark of protest. People were asked to resign from their government job. People were asked to withdraw their children from government control at school and college. People were asked to boycott foreign goods, use only Indians made goods. People were asked to boycott election to the legislative council. So that was a great, call by Gandhiji and other leaders. Boycott the foreign goods, use the Swadeshi. And that was the phase of Gandhian. The historians they divided Gandhian era. That was the last phase of INC, Indian National Congress. The INC also demands for Swaraj or self-governments. Only completely non-violent means would be employed to get the demands fulfilled. The non-cooperation movement was decisive step in independence movement because for the first time INC was ready to forgo constitutional means to achieve self-rule, Swaraj. Gandhiji had assured that Swaraj would be achieved in a year if this movement was continue to completion. Dear friend, what are the reason behind this? Why Gandhiji called this movement? First one, the resentment at the British after the war. Indians thought that in return of the extensive support of manpower and resource they had provided to Britain during First World War, they would be rewarded by autonomy at the end of war. But the Government of India Act 1990 was dissatisfactory. In addition, the British also passed repressive acts like Rawalath Act, which is, the Indians declared that Rawalath Act as the Black Act. The another cause why Gandhiji, called for, non-cooperation. Another one is Home Rule Movement. The Home Rule Movement started by Annie Besant and Bal Gangadhar Tilak set the stage for the non-cooperation movement. The extremists and the moderates of INC were united and Lucknow Pact. So the solidarity between the Muslim leagues and the Congress party. The return of this extremist gave the INC a military characters. Then economic hardship due to World War First, the Indian peoples they face. They wanted bread and butters. Indians' indirect participation in the war caused a lot of economic hardships. Price of goods began. The inflation started in India. That affects the common man. Peasant also suffer because of the rising price. Another tough region causes that was the Rawalath Act and Jallianwala Massacre of 1990. That was one of the most important cause. For that, Gandhiji called this great movement. The repressive Rawalath Act and brutal massacre at Jallianwala Amritsar had profound effect on Indian leaders and the people. Their faith in the British system of justice was broken and the whole country railed behind its leaders who were pitching for a more aggressive and firm stance against the government. And Gandhiji, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, this Gandhiji, the father of nation, and this Mohandas, his great journey he started from 1915 to 1947. He converted from Mohandas to Gandhiji through these movements by Swadeshi, Satyagraha, I have already told dear friend. And this incident, Rawalath Act and Jallianwala Massacre, that was the great incident. For that, Gandhiji started this great movement. Another, here I would like to say, my dear friend, Jallianwala Massacre. You know, General Dyers, without giving warning to Indians, nationalists, he fired and killed more than 2 lakhs peoples. For that, Gandhiji, called this great non-cooperation movement. Then another one is that Khilafat movement. Khilafat. During the First World War, Turkey, which was German ally, had fought against the British after Turkey defeats the Ottoman Caliphate. He was proposed to be dissolved. The Khilafat movement was launched by the Muslim in India, particularly the Ali brothers, Saifuddin Ali. They started this movement, Khilafat movement in India. The leader of this movement accepted the non-cooperation movement of Gandhiji and led joint protest against the British. That's why Gandhiji started this great non-cooperation movement. But why that movement was suspended? Because here this people sometimes this 3 marks questions are coming, dear students. So you should know this is in highest level also in an administrative service or other competitive exam you will get this question. Why Gandhiji suspended non-cooperation movement? Gandhiji called off this movement in February 1922 in the wake of Chori Chora incident. What Chori Chora? That was a place, in Uttar Pradesh. A violent mob set fire to a police station, killing 22 British policemen. Okay, that's why. Because Gandhiji started, this is a, non-violent movement, but violent occur. That's why, Gandhiji suspended this or called off this movement. Then many leaders, a lot of leaders like Motilal Nehru, C.R. Das were against the suspension of the movement only due to this sporadic incident of this violence. The dear friend, what is the significance of this non-cooperation movement? Swaraj was not achieved in 1 year as Gandhiji had told, but a great impact, a great importance for this great, independence movement, a great impact on this independence movements of India. However, it was truly a mass movement where lakhs of Indians participated in the open protest against the government through peaceful means. It shocked the British government, who were stumped by extent of the movement. It saw participation from both Hindus and Muslims. That's why the British sucked. This movement established the popularity of Congress party among the people. As a result of this movement, people became conscious of their political rights. They were not afraid of the governments. Then they try to, expose their opinions before the British governments. In the meantime, the militant nationalist group also, they started their, struggle to achieve the independence of India. The Mahatma Gandhi, the main brain behind this personality, he was, associated with this great movement. Then Jawaharlal Nehru, then other Subhash Chandra Bose, all that they were associated with this. Lala Lajpat Rai, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, these are the persons, these people were associated with this movement. So here I would like to conclude, my dear friend. The movement turned out to be a failure as it was suspended, and even Swaraj was not achieved in 1 year according to what Gandhiji has said. But this movement had some major impact. Even though the non-cooperation movement was suspended, the urge to fight for freedom went high because of the leadership played by Gandhiji. And after 1920, that was the INC also accepted that was the phase of Gandhian. From 1920 to 1947, in Indian history, Indian freedom struggle, we can see easily that was the Gandhian phase. People started to become politically strong and they started not fear against the British. The non-cooperation movement, no doubt, Gandhiji under the leadership of or under the banner of this great personality, there are 3 movements started. This was the first movement, non-cooperation movement. Then civil disobedience movement, and final movement was Quit India movement. But this non-cooperation movements, a great impact on and show a great path for the Indian freedom movements. People learned about their rights. Their trust for the Congress increased because they were working hard for the betterment of citizen of the country. Non-cooperation movement was against violence. They didn't use any arms. This made people to understand in order to fight against the enemy, it is not always necessary to have arms and weapons. The dear friend, for you have to practice some questions here given. The first question, that examine the causes and contribution of non-cooperation movement to Indian freedom movement. I mean, this is the long questions you have to prepare. Then another question, why and when was non-cooperation movement withdrawn? I hope you enjoy this session, this online class, and please in next time I will give a lectures on civil disobedience movements and other movements started by the INC and Gandhiji. Thank you.